Hello, this is Brett from HireBook. This is a quick overview of what OKRs are and what they can do for your organization. Now, it's important to note that OKRs are kind of a management system, and so everyone that looks at them is going to see them in a slightly different way. So a CEO might see OKRs as a way to get us all aligned against our strategy, and sales might see it as a better way to link marketing and sales together. HR might see it as a tool to get rid of those painful annual performance reviews and replace them with less formal, more frequent performance conversations, etc. So as I tell you this story, each of you is going to hear this on what it does for your organization. So the concept of OKRs, and you've probably seen slides like this a million times in your career. Somehow or the other, we need to be able to take an organization's mission and vision and break that down to what do we need to do this year in order to achieve that mission vision. Once we know what we need to do this year, we can break it down to what do I need to do this quarter. Now, each quarter, we should have some key results, things that I would see more of or less of as I move towards that objective. And that's going to inform us of our day-to-day activities. In other words, I'm taking this long-term view of the organization and backcasting it to what I need to do this year to achieve that. And then what I need to do this quarter in order to know what I need to do this week or this day. So we're taking that longer-term view and decomposing it down. And the term OKR is merely focusing on this quarterly objective and key result, OKR. And the main message here is that the cadence of business is much faster than it used to be. So we need to refresh our strategy not once a year, but once a quarter and get this ongoing feedback of how we're performing. So that's all an OKR is. It's that view of strategy. And as we cascade it down from the year to the quarter, we also take a look at it in terms of what your department or your team or even you individually need to do so that we have that great linkage between your activities that ladder up to the success of the organization. Now, the benefits of the organization are mainly around literally being agile for management. What it allows us to do is very quickly come up with a new strategic direction and cascade it down the organization and across the organization in a matter of days. But the important part is the bottom up. We need feedback back from you on whether your department, team, or individually have the capacity and capability to achieve those objectives during the planning process, and then day to day as we're using it, how we're doing on progress towards those objectives. Because of course we need to course correct. If for some reason you're not making the progress we need, we have to figure out how to resource you correctly so that you can achieve those objectives. Now, the OKR itself is pretty straightforward. It's literally just a verb, noun, key result, target, and date. So let's talk about, say, a call center that's helping people with software, like an accounting package. So if you phone up the call center, the issue is you've had some sort of bug and you're no longer productive. You can't get your work done. So our objective is to increase customer productivity, right? That's the outcome of the work we do. And the key result is going to be call to closure cycle time. How long does it take us to resolve the problem? Our target is to solve it in 4.5 minutes in quarter one. And that's it, an OKR, objective and key result. Now, we want a little bit more precision. And so we're going to ask you to forecast what might happen in quarter two. In this case, a little bit of process improvement. We shave off 0.5 minute. But a miracle is going to happen in quarter three. We're going to cut it in half and then a little bit more improvement in quarter four. So with the OKR, we want a little bit more precision. In fact, what we also want to do is capture the cross-functional nature of work. So in this case, to solve the problem of longer talk time, what we discovered is a lot of time was spent transferring the customer to an operator that knew that product. So we're going to collaborate with HR, and HR is going to train all of our operators across the year. So in the first quarter, we'll all be trained and certified in 2 products. By Q2, we'll be trained and certified in 4, then 6, then 10. So we're capturing what other departments do to help us become successful. Then we're going to tap into IT, and they're going to program the phone switch so that when you call up, I identify your phone call, it can route you to an operator that's certified in the products that you own. And it's the combination of this launch in Q3 and this critical mass of training that makes this miracle occur. So OKRs also capture the cross-functional nature of work. The final thing I want to illustrate on this slide is the concept between a key result that has run the business and a key result that's changed the business. So run the business, those are things you do day in, day out, sales, payables, payroll. And those tend to get measured with SMART measures, simple, measurable, attainable, and so on. Change the business are the projects you're working on to leave behind better processes. And in this case, what we do is we outline the milestone we hope to achieve by the end of the quarter. So there's a bunch of steps in Q1, but it's going to end up with completing the design. Bunch of steps in Q2, but the final milestone is developing the software tool. Bunch of steps in Q3, the final one being launching. So change the business tends to be milestone based. Run the business tend to be SMART measures. That's it. You now understand what OKRs are. And the concept is we start off with the top of the organization and cascade those down. So what do we need to do at a corporate level? Therefore, what the department needs to do. Therefore, what the teams need to do, and so on. So it looks a bit like this. So imagine that we do level 1, the top of the organization. Each department contributes to what's in level 1. Now, part of what they do is what I call above the radar. It's visible by the leadership team. But there's the bulk of the work the department does is below the radar. The leadership team doesn't need to know this stuff. You need to do it in order to achieve this little purple square stuff here, but your managers don't need to know about this. And it repeats. Inside the department, we have teams. And guess what? There's stuff the team does that needs to be seen by the department, but there's also stuff the team does that's below the radar, and so forth. So the idea is eventually this cascades down the organization, and we're being very mindful to make sure that leaders see what they need to see and don't need to get bogged down with the detail, but you need to be able to see that detail and make sure it gets done. So that's the journey we're on. Now, this might take 1 month, it might take a year, it might take several years. There's no rush. We're going to build this out where we need to, when we need to. But inevitably, the organization will get covered. Now, that's the OKR part of it. And I often liken OKRs per se to be like the dashboard of your car. So we're going to build the right dashboard, but we then need the other part. Like when you drive, it's 20% technical, right? The dashboard, the road signs, the lines on the road, 80% social, the behavior on the road. Your job as a manager is the same. It's 20% technical, the OKRs, 80% social. How do we use that to inform better behavior from us and our teammates? So to describe that, I'm going to use this concept called the strategy execution flywheel. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the strategy, and from the strategy for the corporation, we'll be able to tease out what are our quarterly objectives and key results. Now, once we have that, that's great, but that's not going to help us perform better. We need to use those to inform what you and I do daily so that our daily operations are aligned to those objectives. Now, once we've done that work, of course, we need to monitor both. We need to monitor ourselves, but our managers and their other teammates need to know how we're doing because it impacts them as well. Now, it's important when we monitor what's going on, we need to see not only how we're doing against our objectives, but also how do we feel about work? What are the barriers and blockages we have? How can the team help us out? We call those check-ins. So we want to check in at least once a week, but maybe in some cases even once a day. And when we monitor what's going on, we need to be mindful both of how we're doing on our objectives and how we're feeling about work. Now, inevitably, when we learn something from monitoring, that needs to be managed. And we're going to manage it through meetings, whether the meeting is many people getting together or just a one-on-one. Now, there's really 3 outputs from any meeting. One is it might inform us of changes we need to make to our strategy. Secondly, it might inform us of things I need to do this week or this month. So I'm going to call those things tasks as opposed to our quarterly objectives. And those tasks and KPIs inform us of what we need to do in our daily operations. In other words, our daily operations, we're going to look at both the objectives, those quarterly goals, and these monthly or weekly tasks that need to get done. And that's what you monitor. The third thing that comes out of these meetings might be informing those checkups, what the team does to help us, and so on. So this is the management system. And although we call it OKRs, what we're really doing is putting in this management system. The lifeblood of it, of course, is OKRs, but we need these other bits to get the performance. The final concept I want to leave with you here is the flywheel concept. So if you've got a gas engine in your car, at the front of the engine, there's a thing called a flywheel. It's a big, huge, heavy chunk of metal. And what happens is every time a cylinder fires, it kind of nudges that piece of metal forward. And because it's heavy in metal, it creates some momentum. And the next cylinder fires and it moves a bit more. And that wheel gradually begins to move. And it moves in a fairly smooth manner. And that gives you a smooth drive. If you didn't have it, every time a cylinder fired, the car would lurch forward a foot or two. So the flywheel gets you that smooth motion, and we want that flywheel in the organization, the smooth motion forward. And we do that, like the cylinders of your car, by nudging each one of these elements a little bit. So we'll give a little nudge to strategy, and then we'll give a little nudge to our OKRs. And that'll give a little nudge to how we work day to day, which will give a little nudge to how we monitor, which will give us a little nudge to how we manage. And in turn, that will give us that feedback. So this outside flywheel is going to go once a quarter. Now, once a quarter in normal situations. In years like last year with COVID, you could have had 6 or 7 strategies during the year as we were, adjusting around COVID lockdowns, work from home, when the vaccines got ready, and so on. So usually once a quarter, but as required. There's a second flywheel that spins a bit faster, and that's this once a month. So imagine once a month we have new tasks and KPIs, but some departments it might be once a week. And then the third flywheel that spins even faster are these, daily or weekly check-ins. So the management process we're going to be enabling are these ongoing check-ins that happen frequently, these alignment meetings, on a monthly basis, and then the strategy meetings on a quarterly basis. And that's the total management system we're putting in, and we're doing so on the backs of OKRs. Now, the benefits that any organization gets from OKRs varies. Of course, it depends on your starting point, but it covers a broad gambit of things. So, for example, we see that we get better employee performance. And of course, it's not from working harder, it's by getting rid of their waste. We find, for example, the average manager gets back about 48 minutes a week just by having more productive meetings. We see that there's significantly lower burnout. And of course, this is super important with COVID, and what we're now seeing is this mass resignation. So lower burnout because people are more connected with purpose, they understand, and their work is valued and seen. And therefore, it drives up commitment to the organization. So we have lower employee turnover and so forth. Now, something we didn't expect when we surveyed is we find that leaders are scored as being more effective when we do employee surveys. So it makes the leader looks better because you've got a tighter connection to strategy. And that results in overall higher job satisfaction. We see other things too, like less lost time at work. We see a much higher likelihood that you'll get promoted inside the organization because, again, the great work you do is far more visible. We also see greater productivity from both white and blue collar workers. Now, again, you're not necessarily going to see all of these benefits, or maybe you'll see different benefits. But the idea is you can see the benefits of OKRs cover a fairly broad spectrum. So hopefully this gives you a good overview of what OKRs are and how they might fit into our organization as we go forward.